Because we operate in all these areas of content all over the world, and because we sponsor most of the Gartner conferences in all regions, what I thought I'd do is give you a unique perspective on some of the things that we're hearing from a different view than you might see in your own organizations. What we found is that we turn the corner of the year and then boom, there's this massive explosion of don't start small, go big. AI agents, the pace is rapidly changing. The pace at the beginning of February is different than the pace right now that we're seeing in the evolution of AI and how people are talking about AI. So this pace seems like it is only going to accelerate. We're seeing this, we feel it, I'm sure you're feeling the same thing. So these 4 insights that I'm going to walk through, keep this in mind and look at this pace of AI change, mainly from a security perspective and also from the perspective of how your third parties and fourth parties outside of your organization, your collaborators, your vendors, your partners, are also understanding this pace. So I have 4 insights I'll talk through in the next 30 minutes. One is a click to smart, hunger for context. The third is life in the Wild West. And the fourth is vendor DNA. And I'll explain what I mean by each of these terms as we go through it. So first, a click to smart. There's a lot of concern about insider risks, insider threats, inside your organization or insider threats inside your third-party organizations. I'm going to start with the naive leaker. And this is the concept of what I call a click to smart. Who here has a kid in high school or college or a junior staffer? Pretty much, and they're all using AI because they feel like they can be a click from smart. They can get the school assignment done faster. They can study for the test or take the online test using these tools. Often they don't want to let people know that they're using AI to do things faster. And this is a risk for you and a risk for your content. So the content that you have in your organization, and if you're looking to use AI to the maximum, you're hoping your content is AI ready and can be analyzed by the AI systems. But imagine you don't want all of your content, the strategic information that you're generating, the strategic documents that you're sharing, to be easily AI drag and drop ready. And there's really no way to think about how to make this content AI drag and drop proof. And the difference between these naive leakers and the leakee, the receiver of this strategic information, if it's an AI large language model, is the model doesn't forget. Now, think of this in your own organization, and there are lots of people talking about how to protect yourself with special contracts with the big AI providers and so on. But when you put your mind in the realm of your third parties that are less resourced than you, one needs to think about how do you make some of your documents formatted in a way that they're easy for the intended humans to see, but cannot be read by AI systems. And this is a huge concept because if you talk to your content owners, the executives in your organization, the people that are running sensitive business operations, the people are running sensitive technology, disaster recovery programs, and they put this information in documents, ask any of them, would they want a legitimate third-party collaborator to naively have staff that naively drops it into some bootleg ChatGPT system and then leaks that information? Generally, the answer, who here would want to have a solution to that for those business owners? Pretty much everyone. Now, what you can think about is how do you transform that file into like an onion, where there are layers that need to peel, and each layer can expose certain information, and you can control access at those layers, and then you can have AI agents that can reach out and kill that content remotely, melt the inside of that onion or that document if it's attempted to be seen in ways that aren't permitted by you? How can you have this control? And this is something we're happy to talk about it with our product RDocs, but it's something that I would recommend people think about. Not all of your content, but strategic content. And the bottom line here is rethinking security in this age of a naive AI leaker, rethinking it instead of only network or transmission or system security. How do you build the security into the content itself? How do you make that security in the content itself smart? And how do you essentially make that AI agent ready to be able to remotely kill that content? So this is what I call dealing with the mindset of being a click to smart from an end user of strategic content in your organization. Now, speaking about third parties, let's look at it from a cybersecurity perspective. So we talked about naive leakers inside your organization, or more likely inside your less resourced third parties. Now, what about those less resourced third parties that are unknowingly leaking your information to threat actors, to cyber criminals through a compromised mailbox? Now, what are these cyber criminals trying to do? They have a hunger, and they are unburdened by the things that you're burdened by when you're rolling out AI. So the pace of AI, again, is unbounded. You have the burden of dealing with people change and complex systems and data controls and data privacy and regulations and all these things that are making you cautious about what you deploy and how you automate and what you want to give access to agents. You have all these things to think about, but these same people have access to the same technology. If they're these cyber criminal gangs, they have none of those concerns. They can deploy AI agents everywhere. They can experiment without any risk. They can experiment on your less resourced third parties. They can experiment on your data that they have exfiltrated from compromised email accounts, and they can do this at a pace that's only going to accelerate. They're rolling in joy right now because of all these new tools that they have. Now, this is a building, and just imagine the scale of this. This is a building in a major city where there are a lot of cyber criminal hub, okay? Internationally. And every single one of these offices has 3 cyber criminal specialists working 24/7, 3 shifts. They're paid on payroll, they have 401k plan equivalents, they have bonuses that they get, and these buildings are all over the world. Now, these cyber criminals are rolling in joy because these technicians inside these buildings, remember, they're again unbounded. They have versions of ChatGPT specially developed by these technical cyber criminal cabals to make it easy for them to use the tool for nefarious purposes, to use these tools. And they're patient. The well-organized ones are patient. Now, if you remember one thing from this conference, remember this number, 292. This is the average number of days that one of these cyber criminal gangs or individuals will be looking at the content, the back and forth correspondence, watching, doing their reconnaissance, gathering intelligence, gathering documents, gathering message threads before they implement their strike, their plan of action. 292 days. What they're seeing today on data they stole, they might not act on for a year. They might age domains, buy put everything in place, and then right at the right time, they have their game plan. And these are not just one gang or cabal or organization or international criminal organization. These are very sophisticated, over 100 are well-tracked organizations that have a specific roadmap on what they do. Every single one of these organizations, step one, in the sophisticated side is a process called reconnaissance. And what they're trying to do for the nefarious, what their end game is, or the beginning game is to catch context, to understand who's communicating with who about what when. For the cyber criminals, for the nefarious, context is king. And if they have this context, they can do all sorts of things with these AI-powered up tools that they have. This is a screenshot of a video of a cyber criminal that's educating, through a video, training other cyber criminals in the organization how to do face and voice replication joining a Teams or Zoom meeting. And if you see here, in a very low-tech way, they have two phones. The phone that's on the stand farther away has the face and voice replication software. Now, who here gets a lot of voice calls in their phone and you let it go to voicemail, spam calls? That AI look alike. And they can do it in real time where they can speak into the second phone. It will transform their face and voice into the screen of that second phone, and then they can log into the Team or Zoom meeting with the first phone and film the front of the second phone. This is a way of doing it. There are more high-tech ways, but this is a high-tech, low-tech way of doing it. But if they join that meeting and they don't know what the context is, what the transaction is, what they should be talking about, then it will fall flat. So they need that context, and with that context, they can really power up these social engineering tactics. Now, this works in this example. I'm sure you've all probably read about it. This is just one example of the cyber criminals joining a Teams meeting with the CFO to approve, visually in the meeting, approve financing of a particular transaction. In this example, they had 4 people, the cyber criminal who was talking and 4 colleagues, all face and voice replicated to look like a whole finance team, and they sat there and said, yeah, just to verify we should go forward with the transaction. The other 3 were cyber criminals with face and voice replication. They were nodding, and one person was speaking, and they transmitted 13 wires of just over $1 million each for $25 million. Now, there are lots of examples of this today. This was one of the early ones, and when I say early, I'm talking about beginning of last year, it was used. So think about this concept. Reconnaissance, cyber criminal reconnaissance, means they're eavesdropping on some sort of communication, and you are, at the conference here, you are all very secure. But can anyone here think of a third party you deal with, anyone in your organization it deals with, that is not as secure as you are? Reconnaissance is often eavesdropping on correspondence at third parties. This third party concept is the Wild West for you. And I'll talk about life in the Wild West next. And this should help you visualize what we mean by this. So everyone here knows that they're very, very secure. No issues in your networks, no issues on your devices. But you all know, I'm sure, you can think of third parties that you're not quite sure of. Yes, they fill out their surveys, they have their penetration tests, they have their certifications, but these are all static activities. And they might not even know where the leaks are happening, and you certainly can't see where the leaks are happening in their devices. So think about this. Outside of your network, in this Wild West of communications, there are very likely, right now, compromised email accounts. And who are these third parties that often have fewer resources? Lawyers, law firms, accounting firms, could be brokers, could be advisors, could be consultants, could be suppliers, you name it. And you have big ones, and you have smaller ones and mid-sized ones. This is where your weakest link is today. This is what we're seeing. So leaks in your third parties are often invisible to them and invisible to you. But for Raptor AI, and I'll explain what I mean by that. How do you see this? So A lot of people have heard about man-in-the-middle attacks, and the original man-in-the-middle attacks were intercepting email from your perimeter to a recipient. And most people plug this gap with some transmission layer security for email or document transmission. And that, in your mind, is killing this concept of man-in-the-middle attack. But the cyber criminals said, you know, it's a lot easier for us, rather than try to be in the middle of that secure transmission and figure that out, to just find those email accounts or those devices where we can compromise them through a ton of different techniques. I won't get into that now. And this is how you have to think of the modern man-in-the-middle attack. The modern man-in-the-middle attack is eavesdropping on content, not in transport, but on these endpoints. And what we're talking about here is the ability to see when this is happening through internet protocol data and what we call our Raptor AI. We're capturing vast amounts of protocol data on how your content is being interacted with inside your third parties or fourth parties without them having to do anything different. Meaning you're not asking them to do something different to permit this to happen. And what this can do is it can give you visibility that, yeah, the messages that your people are sending to that recipient then forward to another staffer, that staffer forward to an external party, that is now being interacted with in a way that's unexpected per your risk profile that you've set up for those users. Meaning, are you expecting this content to be looked at not just in New York and Chicago and wherever, but also in Lagos, Nigeria on a mobile device at the same time that it's being looked at in Boston? It may be if you're working on an oil deal in Lagos, Nigeria, but if you're not in the business of interacting with businesses in Lagos, Nigeria, then this might be a red flag. You can't see this happening, but it is happening. We're seeing it happening in mass. Now, this is how you can think about it and how you can think about how sophisticated these cyber criminal gangs are. This is what we're seeing. So we're seeing situations where the Raptor dashboard is seeing a lot of proxy access and content delivery, network access, a lot of seemingly benign access, but then it gets a ping from an automated server in Moscow that's actively interacting with your content. Who here would want to know this information? Pretty much everyone. Now, this is automation. So what is happening is these cyber criminal gangs are using ransomware as a service or BEC, business email compromise as a service tools, often built by Russian cyber criminal gangs or organizations. And then these organizations license these tools to other cabals, and they're also offering the ability to have folks in other areas view that content or have automation view that content that's operating on these servers, and they're spreading the noise about the servers accessing information across various geographies and virtual private server hosting companies and so on to mask it. But if you can pick out these needles in the haystack and see that in Moscow at this particular time on a desktop device running automation that has a Russian language underpinning the device language on that system, this should be, for many people, a red alert. The goal is then attributing this particular leak content to a sender, to a receiver, first sender, first receiver, specific content, and then ultimately be able to ideally attribute this to a specific cyber criminal cabal. In this case, we saw Russia, and then we saw another trigger in Benin City, Nigeria. What does this tell us? What is the AI? What do the insights, AI insights tell us about this pattern of interaction? That this is an organized BEC as a service situation coordinated by a Nigerian-based cabal, because we see Benin City, Nigeria, we know that it's most likely black acts, and they're using Russian layered hosting of particular components of the cybercrime. Once you know it's black axe and it has that level of sophistication, then you know that you need to pay attention to this and do something that's not a teenager in the basement of their parents' house drinking Coca-Cola and eating pepperoni pizza. This is a serious, persistent, very well organized, decades of experience groups, and this is information that can help you plan. Now, what Gartner in their Impact Radar report defined as a new category, they call it cybersecurity pre-crime platforms. They named RPost a visionary and innovator in this category. How can you help your third parties that don't have the resources know that they have a leak, remotely kill that leaked information before it causes consequence to you or them? Not only from the naive leaker perspective, but from the third-party risk with threat actors and cyber criminal gangs. The final part is what I'll call vendor DNA. I had some great conversations last night with some CIOs, and it was really insightful to hear their perspective on how they're thinking about moving forward into this realm of the Wild West of AI innovation and change. And what they were saying maps to what I was preparing to present here. And it's thinking about your vendors, your suppliers differently. Instead of transactionally, right? You all buy software or have partners, you buy the tools and then you get a check-in after 3 months. Did you deploy it? After 6 months, how do you like it? After 9 months, let's talk about the renewal, right? And sometimes they're silent until after the renewal time period passes. Very transactional mindset. But what I would argue is that that type of mindset is not going to help you in this new era of such hyper speed, hyper pace of change. You need to think about your vendor. Which of your vendors are willing to collaborate with you? Because they don't have all the answers, and you don't have all the answers, but you have ideas about how you can better use these tools in your environment, in your environment. So which of the vendors that you have now are willing to be collaborators? And it might not be the biggest companies. In Gartner's Magic Quadrant report, they suggested that you think of this era of an era where you need to layer providers. And you might have your core, but you need to layer the nimble, innovative technologies on top, those that are going to adapt faster perhaps than the core. So with our Raptor technology that I mentioned before, we have all these content platforms, email security, document rights controls, electronic signatures, and so on. We underlie it with the Raptor AI technology that can do some of the things I mentioned, but now we're talking to our clients and they're saying, well, can you also have these micro AI agents that are doing pinpoint analyses of risk and then triggering an alert and killing access to a document automated? How can you think about taking that information and doing more with it? So in conclusion, if you're thinking about this new age of change and thinking about vendors versus collaborators, these are 5 things to think about, a framework for you to think about this situation. Find those and look through your vendors and which ones are nimble enough to adapt to support you in this pace of AI change. Which ones are big enough to have proven that they can do this and have a unique approach. Which ones have in their DNA the mindset of collaborating versus being transactional. Which ones can you hook into your complex systems with low effort, and which ones will bring enough additive value that it's going to be worthwhile for you to go through the effort to bring on a vendor and deploy. So it's rethinking, in conclusion, rethinking security, looking at layering specialized collaborators on top of the framework that you're operating today.